Welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian, and we are doing some IELTS speaking today. We're just getting the class started and waiting for people to join in. The class will be starting in just 2 minutes, and I hope that everybody is having a fantastic day so far. While we're waiting, this lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS. Visit us there as usual. In this speaking class, we are going to be looking at an entire speaking section, and I'm probably going to repeat myself once or twice as people are going to be joining into the chat regarding the topic of today's class. Again, we are starting in 1 minute, and I'm just making sure that everything is working. So please do let me know if you have any difficulties hearing the audio or seeing the video. Lighthall is a fantastic platform for live learning. It is designed, in fact, for live learning. We are real time without any lag, which is very, very exciting. And as you can see, we have video and audio, so I will be able to video chat with our students today. Hi, Carolina. Good to have you in here. I hope that you're having a great weekend so far. Please let me know, Carolina, can you hear me nice and clearly on your end? Carolina, I'm going to, awesome. Carolina, I'm going to make you the moderator here today so we can try this out. Let's see. Okay. Carolina, I'm just checking the moderating function on chat, and it looks like I'm the only one that can moderate, so I can moderate people, but I don't know if I can assign anybody to be the moderator. And Sarush is not here with us today, so I'll have to send him an email on that. Okay. I'm wondering, Carolina, in the actions menu at the top, do you have moderator function? Like, can you see in the drop-down menu function that says moderate? I can see it in mine, but I think it might only be available to the teacher. Welcome, Mital. Good to have you in the class. Yeah, okay. So I think the way moderation works, Carolina, is only the teacher can moderate. I don't think a moderator can be assigned to moderate the chat, which is okay for now. But again, I'll let Sarush know that that would be a good feature to have so that viewers can also moderate. All right. Mital, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. I'm going to get started with the lesson now because we're 2 minutes in, and I'm hoping, of course, that lots of people will join in. Welcome, Sun. Good to have all of you here. So, students, this is an IELTS speaking section interview, and the part 2 topic, the cue card topic of today's interview will be about a person who you worked on a project with. Now, just kind of an interesting tip for everybody when you're studying your IELTS exam. A good way to identify the speaking sections that you're practicing is according to part 2. Some of you probably realize that I do this regularly. So when I look at a full speaking section, I always kind of title it by whatever part 2 is. So this one, it's talk about a person you worked on a project with. Does anybody know why I do that? So why do I identify speaking practice by the topic of part two? This is kind of an interesting question to start off this class. And in this class, it will be kind of like our YouTube classes on our YouTube channel, Academic English Help, but a little bit different because we're doing a full speaking section interview with everybody today. And again, the question here, just kind of a thinking question to start you off here is why is it, here, let me do it this way. Why is it a good idea to make a list of topics that you covered in part two and identify speaking according to part two? So why is it a good idea to keep record of your speaking practice based on the topic of part two? Now, we will do part one today as well. But this is something I have been doing for actually quite a long time. Can anybody answer that? We're using the chat right now, so just type your answer into the chat. But of course, I will be calling students and hopefully video chatting with students today as well. So just kind of a fun question, fun question while we start off this speaking session. Why is it a good idea to keep record of your speaking practice based on the topic of part two? So today's speaking will be for part two, talk about a person that you worked on a project with. Why would I do that? So, of course, you should start practicing for IELTS ideally in a perfect situation, like 2 months, 3 months before you sit your IELTS exam, so that you become familiar with the format of the test, the topics. Yeah, very good answer, Carolina. So, Carolina in the chat, if you're looking at the chat, everyone says, Carolina says to practice every category. Yes, exactly, Carolina. You've nailed it. Here's an idiom for you. You hit the nail on the head. Okay. So like when you're using a hammer and you hit the nail on the head, it means you got it right. Exactly. So this idiom means you got it right. Exactly. Yeah. So IELTS speaking, basically the pivot, the center point of your speaking score will be based on part two. Okay. So the biggest deciding factor of your speaking section result will be based on your ability to do a good job on part two. And as some regular students know, there are basically five categories of ideas or five categories of situations that you can see in part two. Okay. There are five situations that you can, or five, I'm going to call these categories. That's a better way to say it. Five categories of questions that you can possibly get in part two. Okay. And as some of you know, that could be a person, it could be a place, it could be an object, it could be an event, or it could be an idea. Okay. And it's very important that you practice all five of these different kinds of part twos. Okay, so it is very important that you keep track of and practice all of these. So by kind of labeling your speaking section practice according to the category of part two. You can keep track of what you practiced, and then you will not be surprised during your IELTS exam if you get any of these kinds of topics. So today we're going to be talking about a person that you worked on a project with. So this is, of course, a person. And it's a little bit of a situation as well. So it's kind of an event as well, because, of course, working together with a person on a project is a kind of event. And part three is connected to part two. So, whatever the topic of part two is, part three is going to be a similar kind of topic. Part one can be a very different topic. So, part one could be about sports, about hobbies, about music. So, completely unrelated to part two and part three. But the bulk, the major part of your speaking section interview will be part two and part three. And those two parts are basically around one concept. So today's topic is around a person. And when you talk about a person, you want to make sure that you describe their appearance. You want to talk about that person's personality or characteristics. And then you want to describe their personality with actions, so the actions that they take or that they do. And we will talk about this more, and you will have a chance to practice this in a little bit as well. So, here, when I do this at home, like let's say I'm doing this at home right now, then I know that I've practiced responding to a cue card based on a person. And so the next time that I practice my speaking, I will choose a speaking question set that focuses on one of these other categories, like talking about a place. So, for example, talk about a place you visit often in your city. Okay. That could be um, uh, one of the questions for the cue card, for example, right? So, talk about a place you visit often. And when you talk about a place, then you have to think about it differently. So, you have to think about its appearance, what it looks like, right? You have to talk about the people that go there. You have to talk about the location, so where it is. You have to talk about the attendees, the people that go there. You have to talk about the activities that happen there. And then you have to talk about your experience. So I don't have time to explain each of these five for you today in one class because we want to focus on this speaking. But basically, you should be rotating or you should be switching up your speaking practice based on the category of the cue card of the speaking. Does that make sense? So I see Nancy and Roshni and Sun Mittal, you're all in here, which is wonderful. Do you get what I mean by making sure to a lot of people, what happens is without even realizing, they end up practicing talking about a person or talking about an object. And then they go to their IELTS exam and suddenly they get a cue card question that's about an idea. So, talk about an idea you had to make your life better. And they get completely shocked because they never practiced giving a short speech on some idea that they had. And then they're super surprised, and it creates a big problem for their confidence and fluency for part two and part three. And even if you do a good job in part one, it's really hard to get a good score if you completely fail and collapse in part two and part three, right? So you don't want any surprises. You want to make sure that when that cue card comes, you can right away identify the category and go, okay, this is an object. I have to talk about its appearance, its origin, its utility, its function. So you're not surprised by the topic. Okay. So I see that Carolina has given us a thumbs up. Nancy says yes. Yagna says thank you. Son says yes, which is great. Okay, excellent. All right, students. So, with that important piece of information in mind for your studies, okay, and by the way, when you're watching these live classes, you probably or maybe you realize that I keep rotating the topics of part two. So, I'm always trying to focus on making sure that one day we do a cue card with an object, the next day we do a cue card with an idea, exactly for this purpose to prepare you for any kind of cue card that comes. Okay. All right, everybody. So, again, this lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS. Visit us there. For the general IELTS, visit us at gieltshelp.com. Those are the websites that we use for our live classes. We will be using these websites somewhat in Lighthall as well, especially for reading and listening materials. So far, we've had speaking sessions in Lighthall, but I will be doing reading and listening and potentially writing sessions in Lighthall as well. So we want to kind of have fun with those sections and get some good learning done as well. And we have this code going this week, IELTS 10, for a 10% discount on the website. So definitely use that. If you have any questions for me and you don't get answers in this class, then send me an email. My email is adrian@aehelp.com. And I will get back to you or one of my colleagues within 24 to 48 hours. Now, our YouTube channel, where many of you might be coming from, is Academic English Help. We have regular live classes there as well that I host to get you prepared for your exam. Okay. And we will actually have another session for speaking today, a full speaking session on Discord. There's a really good Discord server called IELTS Prep. So for students, it's the biggest Discord server. Discord is a piece of software that was originally designed kind of for gaming, but it's where basically a community of people can gather who have similar interests or similar needs and then share ideas and practice. You can probably find some speaking partners there. So keep in mind, Discord is the piece of software. You have to download it if you don't have it. Okay, and then look for or search for IELTS Prep. Okay, that's the server. And then when you're in that server, you can search for our channel, and our channel is called AE Help. So you can find us in there. We're official partners with IELTS Prep, and so that's another great place to um, get help for IELTS. Lots of people there, lots of peer support. Peer support are where other IELTS students are supporting you as well. Okay. And I can see that Roshni and Mittal are getting a little bit of ahead of themselves. Roshni Mittal, I'm happy that you're writing some answers for the speaking section into the chat, but I've got good news for you. I'm actually going to call people. So I need some volunteers as we get going here. So we're going to get going with the speaking section. And hopefully some of you or all of you downloaded the materials for this class. I basically put this I basically put these questions as a PDF into this class. So one cool feature of Lighthall is you can actually share materials with your students. It's not like YouTube. YouTube, you can't really share the materials. So here I've shared the materials. Okay, so see PDF. Um, and you can download that so you can kind of use that to help you. Now, when you're practicing for the IELTS, make sure that you do practice speaking where you are not able to see the questions, because, of course, that creates a different experience. If you can't see the questions, it's a little bit trickier because you can't read them. So you have to make sure that you can understand questions just from listening to them. So without seeing them on the computer screen or on a piece of paper. Okay, so but for now you can see the shared PDF. Okay, and also everybody make sure to speak and repeat. Okay. We're going to do lots of speaking and listening practice as well when you listen to the answers, but I want you to speak primarily. Okay. So the goal here is speak, whether you're speaking with me or whether you are listening to one of your peers speaking, make sure to speak and repeat. So copy the words. I'm going to take different volunteers. We'll have about 40, 50 people in this class, which is a great number. And then we will take some volunteers. So the IELTS speaking section, for those of you who might not know, who are new to IELTS, it's about a 12 to 15-minute interview, and it is either face-to-face or through a computer screen. But of course, you are talking to a trained professional in either case, the examiner. And you have to register early. You have to be prepared for your speaking section interview well before it starts. If you go and speak face to face, you need to register 20 minutes before it starts. And basically, the speaking has three parts. Part one, the examiner will introduce themselves and will get you to introduce yourself. And then they will ask you some questions on a general topic. Okay. So today's speaking part one will be paper and computer. And this question or these questions were on past exams. One question that students often ask is, do the questions repeat in speaking? Yes and no. Does anybody know what I mean by that? So, this is a very common question because people think they can memorize answers for questions, which is not really possible. So, a common question that I get is, do the questions repeat for IELTS speaking? And you could probably ask the same question about the writing as well. Okay. So, the answer here is no, not really. Okay. The examiners get new questions all the time, which are continuously being created by the Cambridge ESOL examination board in the UK. Okay, so there's basically one arm or one branch of IELTS whose responsibility is to just constantly create new exams with new questions. All right. But that doesn't mean that the same idea doesn't repeat itself. So the question, for example, do you work or study? Yeah, you might get that question repeating in multiple IELTS exams. So the first couple questions you might get repeating, but then these questions for IELTS speaking part one, like let's talk about paper and computer, you won't have that repeat, but you might have something like let's talk about writing on paper or let's talk about using a computer, which is going to be similar to let's talk about paper and computer. So they don't repeat the exact same questions, but they do kind of repeat the same ideas because there are only so many ideas that everybody can talk about. Does that kind of make sense? So does everybody understand that? So you can't memorize your answers for questions because you're not going to get the exact same question on your IELTS exam, but you can learn about different categories, different topics, and then you can adapt those topics to different questions. Okay. Yeah, Mital, you might have some words repeating, but not the same question repeating. Okay, so you won't have the same question repeating. The question sets change all the time. Nobody in my more than 10 years of IELTS teaching, nobody has ever said to me, oh yeah, I got the same questions the second time on my IELTS exam. I was so lucky. Okay, not once, never. I could be wrong, but I've never, ever from any person who sat the IELTS more than one time or who had a friend sit the IELTS said, I got the exact same questions. Never. Okay, so IELTS speaking part one. Let's talk about paper and computer, and we're going to do that in a minute. But let's get into it. So I want to give students a chance to speak. I don't want to be the one blabbing your ears off. I want you to blab my ears off. So I'm going to look for some volunteers to just kind of start us off today. And you can video or audio chat with me. If you can, use the video. So let's make this a little bit more exciting and fun. Let's see some faces. So not just my face, but let's see some faces of students. Okay, so let's take some volunteers. So volunteers for speaking. Just right. I want to volunteer in the chat. And then I will enable it. Okay. I will invite you. Please accept the invitation. Okay. And once you volunteer and accept the invitation, then Lighthall will prompt you to video or audio chat. Students, you should have good internet connection for this. Okay. And make sure that you've enabled your camera as well. Okay. We will talk about the answers. So Mattel, I'm going to kind of do that in a combination. So when students answer, I will go through the answers together as well. So we'll build this together. Okay. All right. So does anybody want to volunteer for these warm-up questions? Basically, when you are ready to sit with the examiner will call you into the room at the scheduled time, or you will start your computer interview at the scheduled time. And then the examiner will say, welcome to the speaking section of the IELTS exam. My name is Adrian. I will be your examiner for this part of the test. The test has 3 parts. I will give you instructions for each. I'm recording this for clerical purposes. This is candidate number 25917826 and examiner number 8995. We are conducting this exam in Victoria, and currently the time right now is 6:30 in the morning. Now we shall begin. Okay, so while I'm waiting for some brave souls to volunteer, again, if you want to volunteer, Roshni says I can volunteer. Okay, I was going to start kind of giving these starts, but okay, Roshni, I'm going to invite you, and then while we invite you, hopefully some more people will volunteer as well. So let's do some invitations. Hopefully it works, Roshni. Roshni, if you have camera, that would be fantastic. Okay. We would love to see you as well. So Roshni, I just sent you an invite. And hopefully you can see that invite, and then you can accept the invite. Once you do that, you're going to pop up on my screen, and then we can start talking. So while you do that, the examiner questions for the first couple are always the same. Okay. What is your full name, and may I see your identification? Hi, Roshni.
Hello. Hi, sir.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for volunteering.
My pleasure, sir.
All right. Roshni, you
Yes.
have been an IELTS student for a while, right?
Yes.
Okay. When did you start studying for the IELTS?
A couple of months back.
Awesome. That's a great idea. And why are you taking the IELTS exam?
Uh, I want to go to Canada for my MBA. So that's why I'm doing this IELTS classes.
Okay, Master's in Business.
Yes.
Awesome. And what do you plan to do with your Master's in Business in the future?
We have a business over here in Nepal, so this is a family business. So I think I will carry this forward. This
That's exciting. May I ask what your family business is?
in Nepal we have a pashmina shawl business over here that is like over 25 years back. My father started, so this business has been going along. So I just wanted to bring this business forward.
Okay, and you said Pashminal business?
Pashmina shawl.
Pashmina salt. What is that? Can you explain that to me?
Uh, Pashmina shawl is it is made of yak wool, so it's very warm and it's
Okay,
like very trendy.
okay, that's what I thought. I thought it was some kind of a clothing or a fabric that's traditional
Yes,
to Nepal, right?
yes,
Okay. Yeah, that's a great idea. And hopefully, Roshni, you can make that business go international because, for example, in Canada, Canada is a very multicultural country. And I think you made a
yeah,
very smart choice to do your MBA in Canada because there could be a lot of business opportunities for you in Canada because
yeah.
Canadians love
I hope.
to, well, Canadians love to bring in good parts of other culture. So, like here, people love sushi. Here, people love Latin
Oh,
dance. So, anything that's good in another culture, Canadians love to kind
yeah,
of absorb it into the culture. So, I'm sure if
that's
you
interesting.
walked around my city, you might find some people would love to sell that kind of clothing. Okay,
Yeah,
Roshni, thank you so much for sharing that information. So let's do a little bit of IELTS speaking. Okay, I'm going to do speaking part
yes,
one
sure.
with you, and all you have to
Okay,
do is just give me answers. I'm going to take some notes while you're giving answers, and then we'll talk about them afterwards and talk a bit of strategy. Sounds good?
yes, sir.
All right. So, Roshni, welcome to the speaking section of the IELTS exam. My name is Adrian. I will be your examiner for this part of the test. May I see your identification?
Yes, sure, sir. Uh, Here it is.
What is your full name?
My my name is Roshni Gupta Ramya. You can call me as Roshni.
And how are you feeling today?
I'm quite nervous today, but it's good.
What helps you relax?
Um, whenever I'm with my friends or with my loved ones, I'm relaxed, and a scoop of ice cream is always there for me to relax.
Let's talk about paper and computer. How often do you write on
Okay.
paper?
Actually, I am a content writer also, so I have most of my works on paper. So there, I often, sorry, yeah.
What is better about writing on a computer?
Uh, I think in this era, everyone is using a computer a lot. I mean, laptop. So to get in touch with the people and to send messages and like official work, writing computer is helping a lot in this regard.
Why?
Um, because as I just said, official work are always on on the scores, so it is helping uh, on this matter.
When is a paper more useful than a computer for writing?
um, I will say like in developing countries, paper is mostly used because as we can see there are lots of newspapers, old century year old newspapers which are traditionally going on in developing countries, and uh, I just messed up.
Do you like to read on paper or from a computer?
uh, I would like to. I like to read on paper, because it is because I always like to feel, uh, because it's tangible, and it always gave me a sense of comfort and accessibility.
If you had to write a book, would you choose to do it on paper or with a computer?
I would definitely choose a paper, because, like I said, it's tangible, and most of the I think most of the users also prefer to see a tangible book than a ebook.
Have the way people write changed because of the computer?
Yes, definitely. Because in this 21st century, um, everything is dependent on computer, and s- I'm sorry.
All right, Roshni, so that's the end of part one. We will now continue with part two. For this part, I will show you a card with some questions, but we're going to leave part two for now, Roshni. We're going to talk about part one. Roshni, thank you for that. That was really great. And I can tell that you're nervous and you're laughing and chuckling. And, that's why it's good to be here because you get a kind of a feeling for the IELTS
Yeah, it's
exam
my
and you
first
build
time, so
confidence. Yeah, I got that. Okay, so Roshni, I have really good news for you and
yeah.
bad news, but the bad news isn't actually all that bad.
Okay.
So, based on speaking with you, I can actually tell that you have quite good English. So, you have a lot of vocabulary. Like you're using a word, for example, like tangible very comfortably. Okay. For
Okay.
anybody who's watching right now, tangible means a real world. It can be touched. Okay. And the opposite of the word tangible, Roshni, do you know what the opposite of the word tangible is?
Intangible.
Intangible. That's right. Okay. So the opposite of the word is intangible. The antonym is intangible. Intangible, an example of intangible would be something like astrophysics. You can't really touch astrophysics. It's a concept or a scientific concept rather than something that's tangible like a coffee cup. Coffee cup is tangible. I can touch it, right? Language is intangible. So when you're using words like tangible comfortably, Roshni, that gives me an idea that, okay, you have a lot of vocabulary, and not just that word, but other words as well that you used. And the IELTS examiner cannot give you a score based on what they're guessing is your level. So I guess that your level is actually like a band eight. And it will be awesome for you to get that band aid because that means you can get like an express entry or a fast entry visa, something like that. So, or get into more universities. So, I think you can get as high as a band aid, but you definitely have to change the way you're answering questions.
Yeah.
Um, these answers would get you like a band 5.5, maybe a six.
Actually, I'm targeting for 9.
Yeah, I mean, so for 9, you really have to work, and, I
Yeah.
don't think it's an impossibility for you, but I definitely think you have to
Yeah.
really focus on what you're saying. So, um, notice how I'm like a robot when I'm asking you the questions. So, I don't stop for anything. So, when you get stuck or when you say, "I'm sorry," or when you start laughing, the examiner does nothing. They're like a robot in this
Okay.
conversation. They're not going to be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry you feel bad," or "Oh, just don't be nervous." They're not going to do anything like that. They're kind of like a robot. They
Okay.
just go to the next question, next question. So you have to be the same. You have to be kind of like this emotional robot that's just focused on strategy. Okay.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right. And I know that's hard to do, especially because some people are very emotional and full of happiness and sadness. But for the IELTS, you just have to put that aside. And it's like you're in a business meeting, Roshni. So in some ways, the IELTS is good training for your business activities in the future, where when it's business, it's all business. We
Yes.
even have this saying in English, it's all about business. Okay, let's go through these a little bit together. And then while we have everybody watching here, okay, and I see some questions or some answers for these in the chat as well. So students, you can answer this. And Roshni, just hang out with me.
Okay.
Okay, so stay here with me. I'm gonna maybe bring in some other people as well. Okay, so this first question is, how often do you write on paper? Okay,
Okay.
so what is the target of this question, Roshni? And here, other people in the chat can also answer this for us. So, what's the target of this question, Roshni? What kind of information is the examiner looking for here?
I think the examiner wants to know that how often I am on paper, like I'm busy on paper, focusing on writing things and all.
Yeah, it's put in a simple way, and I see that Yagna in the chat is saying it's the duration, so the amount of time, right? And Dwi is saying how many in one period of time, or we can say frequency. Okay, so when you have this question of how often, then what you're really looking at is the duration and the frequency, because that describes or defines the concept of often. Okay. What you did is you tried to give me like a piece of your life, and then you gave me a very subjective idea. So you said, actually, I'm a content writer, so I have most of my works on paper. And as your examiner or as your listener, Roshan, I'm kind of like, okay, you're a content writer. So what kind of content? And is this your job? And then you said, I do most of my works on paper. And then I'm like, okay, so that means that you use the paper a lot, right?
Yes.
Okay. What does that really mean? So what does it really mean a lot? So can you tell me, do you write on paper every day?
I could say that. Yeah.
Okay. So every day, right?
Yes.
And what would you say the average amount of time that you write on paper every day? So 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour,
Yeah. 1 hour or two.
1 to 2 hours each day. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So always what you want to do is you want to start with your answer. Okay.
Okay.
Your answer here is that you often or you frequently write on paper. Okay. So this is you. I'm Roshni right now in Nepal.
Yeah.
Okay. So I frequently write on paper.
Okay.
Now that's the subjective part. Okay. And then you explain it. And the way you explain it is you give it numbers, right? So I would say every day, at least 1 to 2 hours. Why? Here's the explanation, right? Okay. Because I am a content writer. What do you mean by content writer? So, what do you write content for?
I write for a newspaper, a local newspaper over here.
Okay,
But
perfect. Because
yeah.
okay. You don't need to overdo it. So, Roshni, just keep in mind it's the IELTS, it's not a job interview. You don't have to give me like tons of detail, just enough detail so I'm clear, right? Because I'm a content writer for a local newspaper. When's the last time that you did this, that you wrote an
Uh,
article?
um, I could say last Friday.
Okay. Another really important tip, Roshni. And by the way, the tips that I'm giving Roshni, everybody, this is for all of you. Okay. So you don't have to tell me the truth when you're giving me the example. So you shouldn't stop yourself and be like, okay, when was the last time that you don't need to tell me that. So you can say yesterday
Okay.
or Tuesday or Friday or Saturday. On the IELTS exam, you don't have to have the specific truth. Okay. It just
Okay.
has to be believable. So last Friday, I wrote an article about birds in my community. and I did it on paper.
Yes.
Okay, because the focus is paper, right? So you always want to, when you're practicing, and again, this is advice for everybody, you always want to go with this: answer the question, okay, then give an explanation, and then you want to give an example, okay? Stay
Okay.
to this structure because it's the easiest. It makes the most sense. What you did is you started with kind of an explanation or almost like an example. Like you said, I'm a content writer. When you start with an example or an explanation and you're talking to a stranger, like the examiner,
Yeah.
it can be really confusing. I'm like, okay, so what kind of content? Like for blogs? Why are you writing blog content on paper? Right? So you have to be really careful. So a better answer would be I frequently write on paper. So I would say every day, at least 1 to 2 hours, because I'm a content writer for a local newspaper. Last Friday, I wrote an article about birds in my community, and it was on paper. Now I'm
Can I
100%
ask
clear.
you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, can I say I regularly write on paper?
You
Like,
can. Regularly would be a synonym for frequently. So regularly, often, or usually, those are all more or less synonyms. Yeah. Okay.
okay, okay,
We call those adverbs of frequency. So adverbs of frequency, if you think about your English studies, they're like always, usually, often, sometimes, rarely, never, right?
yeah,
But adverbs of frequently are subjective, right? So if I say to somebody, I rarely write on paper, what does that mean? Right? Like once a
once
week,
in a blue moon.
once a month, once
Yeah,
in a blue moon is still subjective. We have no idea. So you have to define it. You have to give numbers, right?
okay,
Clarity is key. So let's just try this one, Roshni. How
okay.
often do you write on paper?
I frequently write on paper, so I say every day at least 1 to 2 hours because I'm a content writer for a local newspaper.
And example.
Sorry.
Give me the example.
Yeah. Like last week, I just write a article about birds
On paper.
on paper.
Right, you always so good, and it's just little tips. So it's these little
Yeah.
pieces that make that band 9. So you said I want to get a band 9. If you want to get a band 9, it's those little pieces that start to become really
Yeah.
important, because the subject here, right? I mean, you know how English is subject, verb, object, right? So the second subject or the object of this question is paper, right? How often do you write on
Mm,
paper? So you have to emphasize that object of paper, right? It's very important.
okay.
All right, Roshni, that's what you want to practice. Okay, so keep it up, and I think you can get an awesome score. So make sure to practice that and stay in the class. I'll maybe call back on you again in a little bit. Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, you can. The question. So sometimes students are a little bit nervous, but the questions that you
Yeah.
have, a lot of other students will have the same question. So go ahead, ask me the question.
Okay. Like I'm good at writing, but whenever I talk to strangers or someone I have to converse on English, then I just get nervous. So I don't know how to like be confident on that. So
That's
can you
a
give me some tips? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So that's a very, very common. That's a great question. I'm sure a lot of people have that same question of how do I build confidence in speaking.
Yeah.
So confidence comes with practice. Okay.
Okay.
Most of us are not born confident. It comes with practice and just doing it, right?
Okay.
Also, to build confidence, keep your goal in mind. Okay.
Yeah.
And don't give too much value to each situation. What I mean by that is, don't think about the examiner as this almighty, powerful commander or something that you have to be scared of or that you have to really impress or really be freaked out about. They're just another person. Just like you woke up this morning and had some breakfast. I did the same thing. We're on the same page. You speak Nepalese, I speak English, and we both communicate. So, we're on equal grounds, right? So you don't have,
Yeah.
there's nothing to be nervous about. We're on equal grounds, right? So keep
Yes.
that in mind. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
All right, Roshni, and practice. Practice is the best way to build confidence. So
Yes. Sure.
keep up the good work. Stay in the class. I might call you back in a bit. Okay.
Okay.
All
Okay,
right.
sir.
Thanks, Roshni. Bye for now.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Take care.
Okay. So let's take another volunteer. So thank you for the thumbs up, Carolina and Baljit. Roshni did a really good job. Once we're done, you can remove yourself if you want, or you can just keep hanging out, and then I can turn your microphone back on. I'd like to take another volunteer for speaking part one for some of these other questions. So if you'd like to volunteer, if you want to speak with me, please let me know in the chat. Meanwhile, I'm going to, while I'm finding volunteers, I'm going to give you some answers for these questions, and I want you to do the same. Okay. So, based on what I was teaching Roshni about answer, explanation, example, let me go through some of these questions with answers and then copy after me. So, this first one was, how often do you write on paper? And a possible answer is, I frequently write on paper. So I would say every day at least 1 to 2 hours because I'm a content writer for a local newspaper. Last Friday, I wrote an article about birds in my community and I did it on paper. Okay. And then the next question was, what is better about writing on a computer? Now, here, really answer the questions directly, students. So I believe the best part of writing on a computer is software assistance. I mean, the computer can correct spelling and grammar, and this helps me to have clear and accurate writing. Um, Last week, I wrote an essay for school and I corrected it using Microsoft Word spell check. Okay, that's it. As I'm writing this, you can copy, okay, what I'm saying. So I believe the best part of writing on a computer is software assistance. I mean, the computer can correct spelling and grammar, and this helps me to have clear and accurate writing. Last week, I wrote an essay for school and I corrected it using MS Word spell check. Okay. When is a paper more useful than a computer for writing? Use the question. Okay. So I believe, or I think, that writing on paper is better than a computer when a person is capturing ideas. I often write down my ideas on paper so that I can have these in front of me at any time without having to turn on a device. I had a great idea for an article for the newspaper the other day. So I quickly wrote it on a small piece of paper and put it on my fridge. Okay. So again, repeat after me. because I will be taking another volunteer for speaking part 1 here. And what we're practicing for speaking part 1, this answer, explanation, example, is exactly what you have to use in part 3 and even in part 2 in some sense, because you're also answering, explaining, and giving examples throughout. This isn't, Adrian's method. This is simply the method of good communication. So here we go. I think that writing on paper is better than a computer when a person is capturing ideas. I often write down my ideas on paper so that I can have these in front of me at any time without having to turn on a device. I had a great idea for an article for the newspaper the other day, so I quickly wrote it on a small piece of paper and put it on my fridge. Do you like to read on paper or from a computer? I prefer, right? It's a preference question. I prefer to read from paper because it doesn't hurt my eyes, especially if I'm reading late at night in the dark for long periods of time, like 2 hours. This is the reason I read my favorite novels from paper books, such as Lord of the Rings. Okay, so again, answer, explanation, example. And you can get a band 9 without giving a very fancy answer. It just has to be a clear answer. So a lot of people prefer to read from paper because it's easier on the eyes, or it does not hurt the eyes. There isn't a strong light coming towards the eyes. So I prefer to read from paper because it doesn't hurt my eyes, especially if I'm reading late at night in the dark for long periods of time, like 2 hours. This is the reason I read my favorite novels from paper books, such as Lord of the Rings. Okay, now, next one. And Roshni, pay attention here because this is a conditional. Okay. So you did not use the condition in your answer. Here, the question is, if you had to write a book, would you choose to do it on paper or with a computer? Okay. If I were to write a book, I would most likely choose to do it with a computer for two reasons. One, I type much faster than write by hand. And second, as I had mentioned before, I can use software like Grammarly to check my spelling and grammar. Okay, and that's it. So if you had to write a book, would you choose to do it on a paper or with a computer? If I were to write a book, I would most likely choose to do it with a computer for two reasons. One, I type much faster than writing by hand. And second, as I had mentioned before, I can use software like Grammarly to check my spelling and grammar. And I just did that using Grammarly. So point in case. Okay. All right. And then one last question for part 1. Again, I'm going to use the grammar, and everybody pay attention because after this one, I will take one more volunteer for part 1. Okay. So, have the way people write changed because of the computer? In what way? Right away, use the present perfect because the question is in present perfect. Have the way people write changed? Yes. The approach to writing has changed due to the advent of the computer. People write much more now than in the past because it is easy and convenient using a PC. I mean, there is no limit to paper and ink, and people write very fast using a keyboard. Therefore, millions of articles are written each day around the world. Okay, so present perfect, answer in present perfect. Have the way people write changed because of the computer? In what way? Yes, the approach to writing has changed due to the advent of the computer. People write much more now than in the past because it is easy and convenient using a PC. I mean, there is no limit to paper and ink, and people write very fast using a keyboard. Therefore, millions of articles are written each day around the world. Okay, so those are the kinds of answers that will get you high band scores. Paraphrasing the question, using the question, giving an answer, giving an explanation, and giving an example. And you don't need to overthink it. Okay, so you don't have to really think about some specific truth that's very complicated to explain. Okay, so I'm looking for those volunteers, and I can see that we have some. So let me just check here. Okay, I saw some volunteers here. Did that person leave? Nancy, I think, wanted to volunteer. I thought I saw that a little bit earlier. So, Nancy, if you're still there, I'm going to invite you. If you decided not to, that's fine as well. So let's just see. Nancy is in here. Okay, so Nancy, I just sent you an invite. We're going to do part one again, keeping in mind some of these tips and strategies that I just discussed. Once you have these ideas, part one doesn't take a lot of time. Part one only takes about 5 minutes, and then we're going to go into part two. And I would love to have some volunteers for part two as well. So if you want to volunteer, please let me know in the chat. Okay. All right. Hi, Nancy.
Hello, sir.
How are you?
I'm good.
Awesome. Um, and I can see that you're using a mobile phone.
Yes, I am.
Okay, that's cool. The reason I'm noticing that is Lighthall is designed for PC, but hey, if it works on mobile, why not, right? So that's awesome. Nancy, where are you right now in the world?
I'm from India.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which state?
I'm from Haryana, but basically, right now, I'm residing in Uttarakhand, Rishikesh, because of my work here.
Awesome. Yeah, when people are, so I'm becoming more and more familiar with culture in India. And of course, India is a big country. So, when people say I'm from India, it's kind of like saying I'm from Europe, right? So
Yeah,
it's more than 1 billion people, right? So your state has more people than all of Canada. So,
yeah, that's true.
all right. Okay, so Nancy, let's do this. So I'm going to go through these questions and then give me answers based on the strategies that we have been discussing. Are you ready?
Sure, sir.
Okay, so let's talk about paper and computer. How often do you write on paper?
I frequently write on paper because I'm a nursing officer here in my country, India, and we usually work on paper and with paper and pen, and we don't use computers here much. For example, for even basic entries, we write in paper with paper and pen.
What is better about writing on a computer?
Computer is far better than paper and pen writing because you can correct many of your mistakes with, as you said, with Grammarly. But from my point of view, I prefer paper and pen more than computer.
When is a paper more useful than a computer for writing?
Um, it is paper is more useful in those situations where there is no electricity, you have power cuts. So at that time, the only solution for your problem is the paper and the pen.
Do you like to read on paper or from a computer?
I like to read on paper much because I have tried reading it on the computer several times, but my eyes hurt because of that. Within 2 or 3 hours, just leave that content and switch off my PC. So I prefer reading it on my book, reading it on a paper as compared to a system or a computer.
If you had to write a book, would you choose to do it on paper or with a computer? Why?
I would, uh, for this, I would prefer a computer over my paper and pen because it is much more easy to use and you can catch your mistakes just by any app you install, and it is very easy to send to anyone and you can get it checked very easily.
Have the way people write changed because of the computer?
um, as far as I can see it in my country, people nowadays don't use the paper and pen approach. They the computer and uh, electronics more over the paper and pen because they can write it on the go, and it saves their time and they can work more efficiently with it.
That is the end of part one. We will now continue with part two. Okay,
Okay.
Nancy, good. Stressful, right? Question after question after question. And that's, that's what you have to prepare for. That's one of the parts of the IELTS speaking that's kind of tricky for people because in real life, we don't have such a situation usually where somebody is just firing questions at us, right? So in real life, our conversations are a little bit more dynamic. Like, a person asks us a question, we give an answer, then maybe they ask one more question, then we give an answer, then we ask a question. So it's a little bit more back and forth. But here it's just question, right? And you're like, by the end, you're like, stop talking to me about
Yes,
computers
sir.
and paper. So, but on the IELTS, you can't do that. So you have to just stay focused and you really have to get into your head the answer. One really good point in your speaking, Nancy, is that you were really focusing on, okay, answer, explanation. You got the example for the first question, but then you kind of forgot about the examples after. So in the first one, you're like, oh yeah, example. And then you started speaking, for
Yes, sir.
example, um,
It will take time, but I'll
practice.
improve myself.
Oh, absolutely. We all improve. That's the good news. So you want to keep in mind, okay, include another example,
Yes.
Now, also, Nancy, to improve your answers and to improve your speaking, avoid the you. So oftentimes, and we do this when we're nervous, especially, we switch to you do this, you do that.
Yes, sir.
And for many of your answers, you switch to saying you, like you can check your grammar, you can make corrections, you can do this. There were a couple of really awkward shifts where you actually started talking about yourself and then suddenly you're talking about you. And it was like, are we talking about you or are we talking about me? Who are we talking? Are we talking about both of us? Who are we talking about? Right? So
I
avoid the
have to
you.
avoid the second person.
Yeah, avoid the
Okay.
second person completely. Okay. Otherwise, it was the right approach. Okay, so it was the right approach. I think you would get like a band 6.5, but I think that you should be able to get a much higher band score. So you should be able, just like with Roshni, you should be able to get like at least I think a 7.5, but you have to adjust your
Yes.
communication to do that. Okay, so that will come with practice. All right. I'm going to get into some part two and part three, Nancy. So hang in there. I might call back on you. Okay. But thank you so much for volunteering and for practicing this. Do you have a
Oh,
question?
no, sir.
No, you're good.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you have a question, you can always
I'll
type
come.
it to me in the
I'll come
chat.
next time with better answers.
Okay. Always be proud of your language. Can you imagine if I started speaking Hindi or Punjabi to you as well as you just spoke English to me? I would be so happy. I'd be like, woohoo! But I can't do that. So,
Okay.
okay, Nancy, hang in there. Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right. Bye for now. All right. Good. Yeah, Roshni, absolutely. You can say people instead of you. So people and I, me, my, individuals, even more specific, like computer users, right? Or authors, writers. So use those specific nouns instead of the you. Okay. The reader, right? So a lot of nouns you can turn into a person noun, like read, reading, reader. The reader or the writer, right? So you can do that. Okay, let's take a volunteer for part two and part three. No, Mattel, human beings is a bit weird. It's like we usually don't say human beings. Sometimes we say humans, but even that is unusual. Humans and human beings, if we're talking about a sci-fi movie. Baljeet, thank you for that compliment to Nancy. Yeah, I think Nancy was quite nervous about her English, but Nancy, you have really good English. Okay. All right. Taking a volunteer for part two, everyone. So, who would like to volunteer for part two? Practice the cue card. Again, don't be shy. I will give you feedback. And one of my goals here is for you to really just practice. Baljeet says, me, sir. Okay, Baljeet, let's do it. We're going to kind of do it together. So, Baljeet, I'm going to invite you here. Okay, so accept my invitation and then I'll walk you through part two. Let's see, Baljeet. Yep, there you are. Okay, Baljeet, I just sent you an invite. You should be able to join in. Okay. And then we'll do part two. So when part one is done, the examiner will say that is the end of part one. We will now continue with part two. For part two, I will show you some questions. You will have 1 minute to read these questions, and then you will have 1 to 2 minutes to speak. You can take notes in the 1 minute if you wish. Hi, Baljeet.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. It looks like you're ready for some video gaming after this class.
No, sir. Actually, I have this pair of headphones, so I use this for listening as well as watching streamings for your classes.
Perfect. And let me tell you, it's got a good microphone on it because I can hear you very clearly. So that's fantastic. Good to see you, Baljeet. I don't know if I ever saw you before.
Yes, sir. We had a speaking session.
I know, I was just kidding. I'm just, but I don't recognize you with the headphones. No, I'm kidding with you, Baljeet. All
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Baljeet, let's do this part two, okay? So we're going to kind of prepare together. I'm going to assist you going into part two, okay? So
Okay.
basically, you get presented this card, and part two is really the only part where you actually get to see the questions, right? So part one, you don't see the questions. Part three, you don't see the questions. Part two, you see the questions. They're in front of you, right? So we look at the card and we read it twice. So can you just read this card for me, the questions 2 times, please?
Okay, sir. Talk about a person you worked on a project with. Who is this person? What was the project? What did they do on the project? Will you work on a project with this person? Why or why not? Talk
Okay.
about a person
Keep going. Yeah.
you worked on a project with. Who is this person? What was the project? What did they do on this project? Would you work on a project with this person? Why or why not?
Okay. And I think there's a missing piece here again. So would you work with them on a project again? Okay, good. So now we're kind of clear on what this is really asking. Okay. And then, of course, in the real IELTS, you're doing this quietly and you do it very quickly. So here you're talking about a person. When you talk about a person, you want to quickly describe a little bit of what they look like, just so we can picture them. And then you want to get right into their personality. So they're hardworking, they're punctual, so on. And then backed up with action, right? So every time you think of personality, you have to explain to your listener that personality. So if you say that they're hardworking, you have to say, they invested over 200 hours into the project, right? So that's what we're going to do, Baljeet, and I'm going to help you, and then you take some notes. But to get going here, we got to come up with some good ideas, right? So,
Yes.
Baljeet, have you ever worked together on a project with another person?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Uh,
can you tell me about it?
Actually, it was an inverter.
Hmm. I think we talked about this already, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and who
That
did you work with on the inverter?
it was my friend. Uh,
Okay,
it was my friend Lakshman.
Lakshman. I can't spell that,
Uh,
but
Lax
mhm,
Laxman.
Lakshman. Okay, all right.
Uh,
Inverter. Tell me about another project that you worked on with somebody.
mm, hmm. Uh, I actually hmm,
Do you work
haven't
right
worked
now?
with.
Well, I'm sure you have. Believe me, but we work on projects with people all the time. Everybody does. We're humans. We're social. That's what we do. So right now, you're working on a project with me. Your project is getting ready for the IELTS exam, and you're working together with me to get ready for the IELTS exam. So you can consider any kind of a goal or a task a type of project, and as long as you're working together with somebody, then you can say you're working together with that person to achieve that goal, right? So that can
Can
be a
we?
project.
Can I talk about a game like a cricket game or?
Yeah, even that you could do. Yeah, Adrian to get band 9 on IELTS. Okay, so keep your mind open.
Yes.
Okay, sure. Have you ever organized a cricket match with a friend?
Yes, sir. Actually, I had a match today.
Sure. Okay. Now, here, being a sports player, a part of that match, it's not really the project. The project would be organizing that. Like if you and your friend decide, okay, on this weekend, let's have a tournament with our friends, and then you decide to put together this project. You contact all of the players. You rent a field. You get everybody to pay money. You bring the equipment, or you rent the equipment. That would be the project part, right?
Okay,
Okay.
it can be anything. Like I was
Yeah.
thinking when it comes to project, I was thinking like, oh, any like kind of school kind of project or educational purpose.
And that's a good start point. So it's okay to have that idea, and that's a good starting point. So starting to think about projects from the educational perspective. Of course, the other one would be work, right? So we do have projects in work, like creating an application for a phone or a piece of software, right? Or creating a new menu at a restaurant if you're a chef, right? So those would be projects for work. There's lots of work projects. So work and school projects are the first kind of projects that people think of, but you want to keep an open mind because there's so many other kinds of projects, like volunteer projects, right, where we do something for the family, something for the community. So a project could be, for example, planning a trip for the family, and maybe you plan it with, if you're married, your wife, or you could plan it with a brother or a sister as well. So there are lots of different projects, right? Okay. All right, so let's go with the cricket match. Um,
Okay,
who do you play cricket with? One of your friends that you maybe organize games with?
Love Deep Singh.
Lovedeep?
Love Deep. Yes, sir. You
Okay.
got it right.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I get that those are the two. Okay. All right. So here you're talking about the event a little bit, and you're talking about the person, right? So
Yes.
first, you want to talk about the person. So we want to have, now I'm going to build this part 2 with you, because we're just going to practice this part 2 and then even flow a little bit into part 3. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do it.
I would love to go for a second one.
You can do the second one also, Baljeet. Just give me a second here to build it out so I can teach everybody who's watching how to kind of put together your ideas for part 2 in an effective way so that you can get a good score. You know, a lot of people think, okay, I'm just going to answer these questions one at a time. So who is this person? Lovedeep is my friend that I worked on a project on. What it was this project? This project was a project to host a cricket match for my friends and myself on the weekend. What did they do on the project? So Lovedeep was the person who contacted all the players and was responsible for renting the equipment. Would you work on? Yes, I would work with them again. And that's okay. You do have to answer all the questions on the card, but it's not the most natural or effective way to get those really high band scores. To get those really high band scores, you want to kind of talk about the person, give their personality, and then talk about the event within that context, right?
Yes, sir. It is more like unorganized.
Exactly. And you will answer those questions. So let me do it as a series of questions for you. Okay. So can you describe, okay, so let's answer the topic question first. So give me a nice, full, clear, accurate answer for this question. Talk about a person you worked on a project with. So just answer that statement question for me directly.
Okay. Uh, I worked with my teacher, my English
Let's stick
teacher.
with love. Let's stick with Love Deep for now. So I know you really want to do the IELTS one, but let's stick to the cricket one.
Okay, okay, sir. I worked with one of my friends, Lovedeep, when we go for a cricket match, and he is very good at organizing
Oh,
events.
don't go ahead. Don't go ahead. Don't go ahead yet. Just stop on the first one. So I worked with one of my friends, Love Deep, when we organized a cricket match last month
Okay.
in my community. Okay. So there. Now, give me a little bit of a description of Love Deep. So what does Love Deep look like?
Lovedeep has a robust physique,
Mm-hmm.
and he always prefers short hairs,
Mm-hmm.
and he has beautiful brown eyes as well as a long nose. He's fairly 5.10 feet in height.
Okay, don't overdo it. So for the description, you want to keep it short. Just short, quick, so we can see the person, right? So
Yeah.
Lovedeep has a robust physique with
Yeah.
short hair, big brown eyes, and a long nose. Okay. All right. Now, give me one of his personality traits. So what is Lovedeep like?
He's very good at organized people.
Okay, so keep
Uh,
it
uh,
simple. He
he
is
is
very organized.
yes,
Right.
yes.
So he's very organized. Simple is beautiful. And this is what I want to teach you and everybody else, Baljeet, is keep your thoughts simple, right? So he is very organized. All right. So
Mm,
how can I prove that Love Deep is organized based on the concept of working together on this project with him? So give me just a connection here to the project. So he is very
mm,
organized. What did he do? What would be an example of his organizational ability?
like he always preferred the like in a match. He always preferred that all players are working together.
Okay,
So
too specific, right? Your project is you're organizing this cricket match, right? So keep it simple. Keep it simpler than that. So you worked on this organizing this cricket tournament, organizing this cricket match. A organized people always do this. You should what do organized people always do? Think about just shopping. Like an organized person, when they go shopping, what do they do?
Mm, like they don't mess up in the store.
Pause
Like
it. They make a list, right? You make a list. You make a like a schedule, right? So he is very organized for this project. He made a list of players and a schedule.
Yeah,
He wrote down everyone's contact
like
information and sent notifications on time. Okay, so that would
punctual.
be
Yeah,
organized, right? So he is
yeah,
very organized. For this project, he made a list of players and a schedule. He wrote down everyone's contact information, sent notifications on time. Okay, give me another one of his characteristics.
Mm, I think I have chosen a complicated person.
No, not at all. Simple. Just keep it simple. Simple is easy. Let me help you a
Yeah,
little bit here, Baljeet. So I'm just going to go along, and I'm making it up just like you. So all I'm doing is I'm thinking project, personality, action, right? Project, personality, action, project, personality, action. That's all that I'm spinning in my head to come up with this answer. Okay. So he is hardworking. Okay.
yeah,
For project, you just need a hardworking person. He is very hard working
yeah,
from the start of the project. Notice I'm going to avoid difficult vocabulary on purpose. You don't need to have super difficult vocabulary to get a band 9. So he is very hardworking from start to finish. He invested much time to make sure that this cricket tournament
to be successful.
was exactly. See now that I'm saying, oh yeah, you're like, oh yeah, now I can do it. Right?
Yes,
Was successful. He worked every weekend on this project, at least 5 hours each Saturday and Sunday. In the end, it was a huge success. Everyone had a great time. I was in charge of renting the pitch and the equipment. Me and Love Deep did a fantastic job. Now, so okay, I'm doing good here. I'm answering the card. I'm talking about this person. What do I need to do here, Baljeet? If I'm suddenly kind of looking at the examiner, like, okay, I said a couple of points. I don't want to repeat myself because a lot of students repeat themselves. I don't want to repeat myself. What do I do now?
to give an example.
Okay, before I do that,
Mm, Before that,
yeah. What should I do? Anybody in the chat? What should I be doing right now? What should Baljeet be doing? I shouldn't be doing anything. I'm the examiner. I'm just listening to you. Um, what should Baljeet be doing? Very important, Baljeet. Very important to do this. Look.
questions. Look at the questions.
Exactly. Ding, 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 ding. I need to get it. I want to get a bell for these classes, like ding, 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 ding. Ring the bell. Absolutely, Baljeet. Look at the questions. So many people forget this, right? It's the only part. Remember, I even kind of give you a hint because I said it's the only part where you get to see the questions. Look at the questions. So, what did you answer the question? So, did we answer who is this person?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, they're your friend, right? Did we answer what the project is?
Yes, it was cricket tournament.
Yeah, that you're organizing. Okay, did we answer what they did on this project?
Yeah,
Kind of, right? We said they contacted the players and such, so a little bit. It's not bad. Did we answer, would you work on a project with this person again?
yeah, we forgot it actually.
We have not answered that one, right? The
Yes.
examiner is looking for that. So the examiner is like, right? They're waiting for that. So, and then the why or why not, right? So we definitely want to make sure that we answer that as well. So we look at the card, and this happens so much, Baljeet, in my IELTS training, where students just repeat themselves, they stop talking, and the examiner, unfortunately, the examiner can't say, "Look at the card, you haven't answered all the questions." They can't say that. It has to be up to the student. Okay, so look at the card, look at the questions. Okay, you have to answer all of them. All right. So, would you work with Love Deep on a project again, Baljeet?
Yes, definitely.
So, I would definitely work on a future project with Love Deep. Why?
Because as I previously said, he is hardworking, and he managed all the management programs in this event. Also, the all matches were on schedule, so I think
Yeah. Simplify, Baljeet. So, I would definitely work on a future project with Love Deep because, as I mentioned, he puts in a lot of effort and he is
excellent at
excellent at
management.
management. So I'm sure that whatever we would do would be a huge hit. Okay, notice how I am paraphrasing some of those words. Okay, so here's the answer. I'm going to read it, okay, and then I'll give you a chance. I'll start you off. So I worked with one of my friends, Love Deep, when we organized a cricket match last month in my community. Love Deep has a robust physique with short hair, big brown eyes, and a long nose. And he is very organized. For this project, he made a list of players and a schedule. He wrote down everyone's contact information and sent notifications on time. He is very hardworking. From start to finish, he invested much time to make sure that this cricket tournament was successful. He worked every weekend on this project, at least 5 hours each Saturday and Sunday. And in the end, it was a huge success. Everyone had a great time. I was in charge of renting the pitch and the equipment, and me and Love Deep did a fantastic job. So I would definitely work on a future project with Love Deep because, as I had mentioned, he puts in a lot of effort and he's excellent at management. So I'm sure that whatever we would do would be a huge hit. Okay, that's it.
Yes.
All right, try it, Baljeet. So your 1 minute preparation time is up. Please begin speaking.
I worked with sir. I want to say, please scroll it down, or like I don't want to repeat this. Like read it actually.
Yeah, just say it. Just say it, right? Just say it from the concept, from the structure of the concept.
Okay. So, I worked with one of my friend Lovedev when we organized a cricket match in the community. So Lovedev has a robust physique, short hair, and beautiful brown eyes and long nose. He's very organized when it comes to organizing this event. He made all the calls to players to be on schedule, and he wrote down all the information about every single team in this event. He's a very hardworking because he managed all this event entirely on his own, but I also helped him with the renting the pitch and also the equipment for players. So he actually do did his he actually put lots of efforts to um, for this project. He worked Saturday to he worked 6 days a week. So this event was very successful. Everyone appreciated our work, and I would definitely love to do project with him because as I previously mentioned, he put a lot of efforts in organizing such events. Or At the end, I can say when we will do this project, it would be a huge hit.
Okay, your time is up. I'll stop you there. Okay, Baljeet, good, 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 good. Very good. Very impressive. So you remembered most of the parts. I purposefully kind of came back to the card on the screen because I wanted to remind you of that important point, right? When you get stuck, and you started to get stuck there at one point, the immediately just look at the card. Okay, would I work with this person again? Yeah, I would work with Lovedeep again, because we did a fantastic job. It was successful. I never fought with him. We didn't have any problems between us. The communication was great. So you look at the card, you pick that question, and then you go with it, right? That was good,
Yeah.
Baljeet. So giving an answer like that would definitely get you a nice high band score for part two. It would easily be a 7.5 to an 8. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Baljeet, I'm starting to run out of time. So I'm going to keep you in here with me for one more minute. How does that sound?
Okay.
All right.
That's totally
Um,
fine.
all right. Let's talk about project management. Which personality traits are the most important for successful project completion?
I think uh, most important characteristics of successful project is a person should be well organized, as well as he should be mm, he should be good at managing people, because certain projects involved managing uh, people. As I previously said, Lovedeep was very good at managing people, because we had to organize uh, matches in our community. So I think these characteristics are important.
What are some of the most important steps when starting a project?
Hmm, I think that's an interesting question. Please allow me to think about a second. Mm, I can say that when it comes to initializing any kind of project, first of all, people should have looked into that what kinds of project is it is, and they should be like doing some pre-audit for their project. Like when we started to organize this cricket tournament, we first of all uh, mm, did some audit in from other tournament players, that they uh, gave us a lot of information that how can be good at organizing this tournament.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. That's the end of part three. That concludes the speaking section of the exam. You will have your mark in about 2 days online, and you will have your certificate in about 10 days. Now, in the real exam, I'd ask you 2 or 3 more questions, but I'm running out of time, Baljeet, and I want to take a minute for everybody to emphasize some points that you're doing really well. So here I asked you which personality traits are the most important for successful project completion. And you said, I think the most important characteristics for a successful project, a person should be well organized. Yeah. And that's what we talked about in part two, right? You said Lovedeep is an organized person. So this is where part two, if you do a good job, becomes very useful for part three, because you can make that connection and you can use the same concepts or same ideas to effectively answer part three. The examiner says that, right? The examiner says, now I will ask you questions connected to the topic of part two. So if you're talking about completely different ideas than part two, then either A, you made a big mistake in part two, or B, you're going off topic in part three, right? So
Yes.
your part two and part three answers should be related. There should be a connection there, right?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense, right? So you did a good job of connecting that. When we're good with people, in English we say you have people skills.
Okay.
All right. So repeat after me, Baljeet. They should have people skills.
They should have people skills.
Okay. And then I asked you, what are some important steps when starting a project? Really good job buying some time, right? You're like, ooh, what? So I think that's an interesting question. Allow me a few seconds. And that was good. And then you said, when it comes to initializing an event, people should look into what they need to do. They should do a pre-audit, right? Is what you said?
Yes, sir. Pre-audit.
Okay, again, keep in mind part two. What was the first step in organizing the tournament? You said when we started to organize the cricket tournament, we looked at other tournaments. Yeah, so look at past projects, look at similar projects in the past to evaluate what worked and what didn't work, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
keep it simple, simple. I liked how you realized the example and the connection can help you there. That was really good. All right, Baljeet, I'm running out of time, but do you have a question for me about IELTS speaking?
No, actually, I can really manage to answer the question, but I'm a little bit like in part two, confused. Not confused, I can say. Like sometime I feel like, oh, this cue card or this like it is not for me.
Yeah. Um, People have that feeling all the time. Okay, you are not alone, Baljeet. So Baljeet here is basically saying like sometimes the cue card questions like talk about flowers, right? It's like I don't know anything about flowers. Um, so you have to be ready, and that's why I remember at the very start of the class. It's a nice way to finish this class. I started by saying that every time that you practice for the speaking section, you should make sure to choose a different category. So today we practice talking about a person and kind of an event, right? Organizing a project. That means tomorrow you should practice talking about an object. The day after, you should practice talking about a place. And definitely practice coming up with imaginary answers because there's absolutely a chance that you need to do that in the IELTS exam. Okay.
Yes,
I get that all the time from students. Like sometimes, rare times, I get like the positive where students like, oh, they asked me to talk about the ocean and I'm studying oceans in university. And it was just like perfect. But that's rare. Okay. Usually
yes,
people
yes,
usually people are the opposite. So they're like, they asked me to talk about art and paintings. And I'm a business student. I don't know anything about art and paintings. So it was really hard. So
yes,
you have to be ready for that. Okay.
yeah, sure, sir.
All right, Baljeet, it was great seeing you. I will have another live class on Discord coming up. So if you like gaming, Discord is great. I'm just going back to my gaming joke here,
I know,
Baljeet.
sir. Yes.
All right, so maybe I'll see you there, Baljeet, in the Discord class. Hopefully, I will. Thank you, everybody else, for volunteering and for hanging out with me in this Lighthall class. I hope that you enjoyed it.
Yes,
Um,
I
and
enjoyed
um,
it a lot.
Thank you, Baljeet. I enjoyed you here with me. Carolina, thank you for your support in this class as well. Carolina is always so helpful, and thank you to all of the volunteers. I'm Adrian. I'm signing out for now, but I'll be back in Discord in 19 minutes. I've got 19 minutes to get ready and make up something for that
Okay,
class. So, no, I'm
okay,
kidding.
sir.
I'm ready for it. I'll see you there. Okay, Baljeet?
See you there, sir. Bye.
Bye for now. Bye, everybody. Have a great break and come back and see me on Discord. Bye.
Bye, sir.